You ever had one of those moments where something weird happens in your house, and you just brush it off? A shadow in the corner of your eye, a door creaking open on its own. You tell yourself it's nothing, because the alternative, acknowledging that something unnatural is happening, is way worse. That's exactly what we did when things started getting strange with my little sister's doll. And I regret it more than anything. My name's Jake, and this happened when I was 17. I lived with my parents and my 8-year-old sister, Emily, in a small town in Pennsylvania. We weren't anything special, just a regular family in a regular 2-story house on a quiet street. The kind of place where nothing ever really happens, you know. But that changed the day Emily found the doll. We were at this local flea market one Saturday. My mom loved those places, digging through old junk, bargaining with sellers. Emily, being a kid, was obsessed with the toys, most of which were either missing pieces or covered in grime. And then she saw it. A porcelain doll, about the size of a newborn baby, with soft brown hair in tight ringlets, glassy blue eyes, and a red dress with lace trim. The kind of old-fashioned toy that looks more at home in a haunted house than a child's room. But Emily loved it immediately. "I'll name her Lily," she announced, cradling the thing in her arms like it was alive. The old woman running the booth looked at her and smiled. I still remember that smile. It wasn't warm, not really. More like she was amused. "That's a special doll, sweetheart," she said. "Make sure you take good care of her." My mom gave her a couple of bucks, and just like that, Lily was ours. At first, it was normal. Emily played with Lily every day, dressing her up, setting her up at the dinner table with us, whispering secrets to her at night. Creepy, sure, but little girls get attached to weird things all the time. Then small things started happening. I'd be walking upstairs and swear I saw Lily sitting in the hallway, even though I knew Emily had left her in her room. Doors would be open when they should have been shut. Once, I heard Emily giggling in the middle of the night and, when I checked, she was fast asleep, but Lily was on the floor instead of on the shelf where she belonged. I started joking that the doll was haunted. "Maybe she moves on her own," I teased Emily one night as I tossed Lily onto her bed. "She does," Emily said seriously. "She goes where she wants." I laughed it off. She was a kid with an overactive imagination. That's what I told myself. And then it got worse. One morning, Mom was making breakfast when she frowned and glanced down at the table. "Emily, did you bring Lily down here last night?" Emily, still half asleep, shook her head. Mom held up the doll. "Then how did she get in the kitchen?" My dad looked up from his coffee and sighed. "You probably just forgot, Em. You're always carrying her around." Emily's face scrunched up. "I didn't bring her downstairs," she insisted. I raised an eyebrow. "You're saying she got here by herself?" Emily hesitated. Then, in a quiet voice, she whispered, "Sometimes she moves at night." My mom shot her a look. "Enough, Emily. That's not funny." Emily didn't say anything else, but the way she clutched Lily against her chest made me uneasy. I should have paid more attention. I should have taken her seriously. Because that was just the beginning. A few nights after the kitchen incident, I woke up to a sound in my room. A soft, barely there rustling. Like fabric shifting. I froze. My heart pounded in my ears as I listened. My room was dark except for the glow of my alarm clock, 2:47 a.m. Everything looked normal. The closet door was slightly open, like always. My desk was a mess of textbooks and old soda cans. Nothing was out of place. Then I felt it. A presence. A suffocating, unseen weight in the air, like someone was watching me. I turned my head, slow, careful, toward the foot of my bed. Lily was sitting there. Facing me. Propped up perfectly against my blanket, legs stretched out, hands resting in her lap. Like someone had placed her there with care. I didn't move. My body was ice cold, my fingers clutching the sheets so tightly they ached. My breathing felt too loud, too sharp. I was trying to stay logical. Maybe Emily had come in and left her there. Maybe Mom had picked her up earlier and forgotten. But something was wrong. The doll's head was tilted just slightly, like she was looking at me. And her lips. I could have sworn they were parted. Just enough to show the faintest line of white porcelain teeth. Had she always been like that? I sat up, my movements slow and deliberate. My pulse throbbed in my throat. I didn't take my eyes off her. And then I heard it. A tiny creak from the hallway. I snapped my head toward my door. It was open. Not wide, just a sliver. Enough that I could see a slice of the dark hallway beyond. I reached over and turned on my bedside lamp, bathing the room in weak yellow light. My stomach churned. The doll was still there, smiling at me. Nope. Nope. I grabbed Lily and marched straight to Emily's room, throwing the door open. Emily was asleep. Breathing softly, curled up in her blankets. The doll's usual spot on the shelf above her bed was empty. My hands trembled as I set Lily back where she belonged. The moment I let go, I felt wrong. Like I was turning my back on something I shouldn't. I practically ran back to my room, slammed the door shut, and locked it. I barely slept that night. The next morning, I cornered Emily at breakfast. "Did you put Lily in my room last night?" She looked up from her cereal, blinking sleepily. "No. Are you sure?" I pressed. She frowned. "She was on my shelf when I went to sleep." I looked at my parents. "Did one of you put her in my room?" Mom shook her head, sipping her coffee. "Why would we do that?" I didn't know what to say. I didn't want to sound crazy. But I wasn't imagining this. I wasn't. Emily tugged at my sleeve. When I looked down, she was staring at me with big, solemn eyes. "Sometimes," she whispered, "she moves when she wants to." A chill ran through me. And then Emily said something that made my stomach drop. "She likes you now." That was when I knew something was seriously wrong. And things were only going to get worse. After that night, I started noticing Lily everywhere. At first, it was subtle. She'd be in a different position than where Emily left her. Her head tilted a little too far. Her arms resting at her sides one moment, then crossed over her lap the next. Little things I could dismiss. But then it got worse. Way worse. One evening, I came home late from basketball practice. The house was quiet, Mom and Dad were watching TV downstairs, and Emily was already in bed. I went straight to my room, threw my bag on the floor, and collapsed onto my bed, exhausted. And that's when I noticed her. Lily. Sitting in my desk chair. Facing my bed. Her glassy blue eyes reflecting the dim glow of my bedside lamp. That same half-smile, like she knew something I didn't. My stomach turned. I grabbed the doll and stormed into Emily's room. She was half asleep, blinking at me in confusion. "Stop leaving Lily in my room," I snapped, shoving the doll onto her bed. Emily rubbed her eyes. I didn't. I clenched my jaw. Then how the hell did she end up in my chair? Emily just stared at me. And then, in that small, matter-of-fact voice, she said. "She probably walked." A wave of cold washed over me. "Emily, that's not funny." She shook her head. "She doesn't like being ignored. She wants to play." I had nothing to say to that. I turned on my heel and left. I didn't sleep much that night. The next day, things escalated. I was in the shower when I heard a thump. A dull, solid sound, like something heavy hitting the floor. I froze. Water streamed down my back as I listened, my heartbeat pounding in my ears. Thump. Again. Closer. I reached for the shower curtain, hesitating. The bathroom door was closed, I knew it was. I had locked it out of habit. But then I saw it. A shadow. Under the door. Small. Still. And then, scrape. A soft, slow dragging sound against the wood. Like something was being pulled across the floor. I couldn't breathe. My body was rigid, every nerve in me screaming to move, but I couldn't. The shadow shifted. And then, just as suddenly as it appeared, it was gone. I forced myself to pull the curtain back and stepped out, my wet feet slapping against the tile. I wrapped a towel around myself and stared at the door, my breath coming in sharp gasps. Slowly, cautiously, I unlocked it. I opened the door just a crack, peering into the dim hallway. Empty. Except Lily. She was sitting in the middle of the hallway, facing the bathroom door. Like she had been waiting for me. I didn't touch her. I couldn't. I refused. I stepped around her, my pulse hammering in my throat, and went straight to my room. I shut the door. Locked it. And then I heard Emily scream. A high, sharp, guttural scream from her room. I ran. She was sitting up in bed, wide-eyed, clutching her blankets. Emily. What happened? I rushed over, checking her face, her arms. What's wrong? She pointed. To Lily. The doll was on the floor, at the foot of Emily's bed. Her head was twisted all the way around. A mangled, unnatural angle, like something had wrenched it backward. Emily was shaking. She's mad. My hands clenched into fists. I grabbed the doll by the arm, ignoring the wrongness of touching it, and stormed downstairs. My dad looked up from the couch. Jake. What's wrong? This thing. I held Lily up. Her head was still backward, her smiling face staring at me over her shoulder. Needs to go. Mom frowned. What are you talking about? She's scaring Emily. She's scaring me. Dad sighed. Jake, it's just a doll. No, I snapped. It's not. He rolled his eyes and went back to his beer. If it makes you feel better, throw it out. So I did. I took that doll, marched to the trash bin outside, and buried her under a mountain of garbage bags. I even stood there for a second, waiting. Half expecting something to happen. But nothing did. I let out a shaky breath. It was over. Or at least, I thought it was. Until I woke up at 3:12 a.m. To the feeling of something breathing against my ear. And a voice. A soft, whispered giggle. I turned over. Lily was sitting on my pillow. Her head was back to normal. And she was smiling. This was just the beginning that I didn't scream. I couldn't. I just stared, my body completely paralyzed. My throat locked up. Every hair on my body stood on end. Lily was sitting on my pillow, inches from my face. I could see every detail, her perfectly painted lashes, her porcelain cheeks, her tiny, delicate lips curved into that horrible little smile. And her eyes. They weren't just glass. They were watching me. A deep, knowing stare, like she was alive. And then, she moved. Not much. Just a slight shift. A tilt of her head. Like she was acknowledging me. That was enough. I grabbed her and threw her across the room. She hit the wall with a sickening thud and fell onto the floor. I bolted up, my breaths coming in rapid, panicked gasps. I had thrown her hard enough that she should have broken. But she just lay there, perfectly intact. Still smiling. The room felt wrong. Suffocating. The air was thick and heavy, pressing against my skin. I heard a shuffle in the hallway. Soft. Slow. Like bare feet against the carpet. Emily. I swallowed hard and stood up, my legs unsteady. My door was still locked, I had locked it before I went to bed. And yet, something was standing on the other side. I could feel it. A presence. A cold, unnatural weight. And then, tap, tap, tap. My entire body went rigid. Fingernails. Tapping against the wood. Not knocking. Tapping. Slow. Deliberate. I didn't move. Didn't breathe. And then, a voice. Not Emily's. Not my mom's. A voice too small. Too soft. A child's whisper. Let me in. I lunged for the lamp and flipped it on. The tapping stopped. The hallway outside was dead silent. I stood there, every muscle in my body wound tight, listening. The air felt thick, like the house itself was holding its breath. Minutes passed. Nothing. I finally worked up the courage to move. I crept forward, my hand hovering over the doorknob. Locked. I braced myself, and then jerked it open. The hallway was empty. But Lily? Lily was gone. My stomach dropped. I spun around, searching every inch of my room. Nothing. The spot where she had landed was empty. She had disappeared. Or worse. She was hiding. I barely slept. I kept the light on, my back pressed against the headboard, my eyes darting around the room. Every tiny noise, the creak of the house settling, the hum of the fridge downstairs, sent chills down my spine. By morning, I convinced myself it had to be a dream. Had to be. Until I went downstairs. And saw my mother standing in the kitchen, her back to me. Frozen. Her hands were shaking. A cup of coffee sat untouched on the counter. I took a step closer. Mom. She turned her head just slightly. Just enough that I could see the side of her face. Her eyes were wide. Her skin pale. She lifted a trembling hand and pointed to the kitchen table. I followed her gaze. And my stomach turned to ice. Lily. Sitting in Emily's usual chair. Facing us. Her hands folded neatly in her lap. And a knife, a long, sharp kitchen knife, resting beside her on the table. My mother whispered, barely audible. She was there when I came down. My heart pounded. Where's Emily? Mom swallowed. Still in bed. I grabbed the knife and snatched the doll off the chair. Her tiny body was cold against my fingers. Too cold. I stormed out the back door, straight to the yard. My hands were shaking, my breath coming in sharp, panicked gasps. I dropped to my knees and started digging. The dirt was wet. Sticky. It clung to my hands as I clawed at the earth. I was going to bury her. I didn't care if I looked insane. I didn't care if it made no sense. I was going to get rid of her, and that was final. I dropped Lily into the hole. For a second, I swore I saw her twitch. A tiny, almost imperceptible shift in her porcelain limbs. My stomach churned. I shoveled the dirt back in, burying her deep. It was over. I told myself that. Over and over. It's over. It's over. It's over. And for a little while, I believed it. Until that night. Until Emily woke up screaming. Emily's scream ripped through the house. I bolted upright, my heart hammering against my ribs. The sound was so raw, so primal, like something was hurting her. I didn't think. I just ran. Her bedroom door was already open. Mom and Dad were rushing in behind me. And Emily. Emily was sitting up in bed, shaking uncontrollably. Tears streamed down her face, her tiny hands gripping the blankets so tight her knuckles were white. I rushed to her side. "Emily. What happened?" Her head snapped up to look at me. And the second I saw her eyes, my stomach dropped. They weren't just wide with fear. They were hollow. Like she had seen something she wasn't supposed to. Something she couldn't unsee. "Lily," she whimpered. I felt the blood drain from my face. "No," I said, shaking my head. "No, I buried her." Emily's lips trembled. She's in the walls." My body went cold. Mom knelt beside her, running a hand over her hair. "Sweetheart, it was just a bad dream." Emily jerked away. "No. She was here. She was laughing." A fresh sob racked her tiny frame. She pointed at the wall across from her bed. I turned. For a second, it looked normal. Just plain, white drywall. But then I saw them. Tiny, dark smudges. Like fingerprints. My breathing hitched. I got up, stepping closer, my hands clammy with sweat. I ran my fingers over the marks. The prints were small. Too small to be Emily's. Too perfect. And they led up the wall. Like something had climbed it. I staggered back, my mind racing. My dad was already rubbing his temples, muttering about overactive imaginations. My mom was whispering to Emily, trying to soothe her. But I couldn't shake it. That feeling. That awful, pressing feeling that we were being watched. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay in bed, stiff as a corpse, listening. Every creak of the house sent a fresh jolt of fear through me. And then, sometime around 3 a.m., I heard it. A soft shuffling sound. Coming from inside the walls. I went rigid. My breath came in short, panicked bursts. The sound was faint, but it was there. A light scraping, like fingernails dragging against wood. I squeezed my eyes shut. It's just the house settling. It's just the pipes. And then. Knock. 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 My body froze. It wasn't coming from my door. It was coming from inside the wall. Right behind my bed. Knock. 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 Slow. Rhythmic. Like someone was trying to get out. I couldn't breathe. And then, the worst part. The part that broke me. The giggle. A tiny, muffled child's giggle, coming from inside the wall. Right behind my head. I jumped out of bed, slamming my back against the opposite wall. My legs felt like they weren't even working properly, but I forced myself to move. I ran out of my room, straight to Emily's door. And stopped dead. Her door was open. And she was standing there. Barefoot. Staring at me. Her face was blank. And then she whispered, in a voice that wasn't hers. "She's already inside." I don't know how long I stood there. My body was numb. My brain refused to process what was happening. Emily blinked. And suddenly, her face changed, her blank expression shattered into one of pure terror. She gasped, stumbled backward into her room. And then. Bang. Her door slammed shut. "Emily." I ran forward, grabbing the knob. Locked. "Emily, open the door." She screamed from the other side. A horrible, strangled scream, the kind that made my skin crawl. I threw my entire weight against the door. Once. Twice. On the third hit, it burst open. And I saw her. Emily was curled up in the corner, shaking violently, her eyes locked on something across the room. I followed her gaze. And my stomach turned inside out. The closet door was wide open. And inside was Lily, sitting on the shelf. Her tiny porcelain hands folded in her lap. Her head slightly tilted. And her lips moving. Like she was whispering something. I didn't think. I grabbed the doll, yanked her out of the closet, and threw her across the room. Emily let out a gasp, like she had just broken free from something. She looked at me with wide, terrified eyes. "She doesn't like you anymore," she whispered. I felt it. That awful, suffocating presence. The air in the room thickened. The shadows in the corners stretched, moving even though nothing else was. Lily was no longer just a doll. She had been in this house too long. And now, she was something else. I couldn't stay in Emily's room. Not with Lily still sitting there, her porcelain lips moving, whispering words I couldn't hear. I grabbed Emily and ran. Mom and Dad were already awake. Mom was calling my name, her voice thick with confusion and panic. I didn't stop. I dragged Emily into the hallway, slamming her door shut behind us. Mom rushed toward us. "What happened? What's wrong?" I opened my mouth, tried to tell her everything, but the words stuck in my throat. Because behind her, the house moved. I swear to God, the walls shifted. Like something was crawling just beneath the surface. A slow, almost imperceptible ripple. And the air. The air was wrong. It was thicker than before. Heavier. Like breathing through wet fabric. And then I heard it. A deep, low exhale. Like the house itself was breathing. I felt my knees go weak. Dad came storming up the stairs, rubbing his face, clearly pissed. "What the hell is going on? It's the middle of the goddamn..." He stopped. Because he felt it too. I saw the exact moment it hit him, that split second of realization, of paralyzing dread. The walls groaned. A long, drawn-out creak that sounded too organic, too alive. Then, from behind Emily's door. Knock. 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 Emily screamed, clinging to my shirt. I grabbed Mom's arm. "We have to leave. Now." Dad swallowed. He looked at the door, then at the hallway, then back at me. And for the first time in my entire life, I saw fear in his eyes. He nodded. "We're leaving." We ran. Didn't pack. Didn't grab anything. We just ran. The second we got outside, the air felt lighter. Like we had escaped something thick and suffocating. But we weren't safe. Because when we reached the car, Emily stopped. Her breath hitched. Her whole body went stiff. Mom crouched next to her. "Baby? What's wrong?" Emily lifted a shaking finger and pointed at the house. I turned. And my stomach dropped into a pit of ice. There, in Emily's bedroom window, was Lily. Staring at us. She wasn't just sitting anymore. She was standing. Her tiny porcelain hands pressed against the glass. Her head tilted just slightly. And she was smiling. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was that behind her, just barely visible in the dark, something else was moving. Something tall. Something with long, twisted limbs. Something that shouldn't exist. I grabbed Emily and shoved her into the car. "Drive," I gasped. Dad didn't hesitate. He threw the car into gear and floored it. We didn't look back. We got a motel. One of those shitty roadside ones with flickering neon signs and cigarette burns in the comforters. Didn't matter. As long as it wasn't there. I sat on the edge of the bed, still shaking. My mind was fractured, replaying everything over and over. I buried her. I buried her. So how the hell did she come back? Mom paced the room, rubbing her temples. Dad sat at the tiny motel table, gripping a plastic cup so hard it nearly cracked. Emily was curled up on the bed, watching the door. Like she was waiting for something. And then, around 3 a.m., she whispered. "She's coming." My blood turned to ice. I turned slowly. "What?" Emily looked at me. And then, in the dim motel light, she smiled. Not her smile. Lily's smile. My hands shook. "Emily," I whispered. "What did you just say?" She tilted her head, her glassy eyes locked on mine. And in a voice that wasn't hers, she whispered. "She's already here." I lunged for her, shaking her by the shoulders. "Emily. Snap out of it." Her lips trembled. For a split second, her real expression flickered back. She gasped, like she had just been released from something. She screamed. Mom rushed over. "What's happening? What's wrong?" Emily was thrashing in my arms. "It hurts," she wailed. "She's inside me." The motel lights flickered. The walls groaned. And from the corner of the room, a tiny giggle. I turned my head, every muscle in my body freezing. Because Lily was sitting in the motel chair. Right there. Her tiny hands folded in her lap. Her head tilted. Still smiling. The room plunged into darkness. And the last thing I heard, before the screaming started, was footsteps. Tiny, porcelain footsteps. Moving closer, the lights went out. Total blackness. Suffocating, pressing, endless. I couldn't see Emily. Couldn't see my parents. But I could hear them. Mom screaming. Dad cursing, stumbling around in the dark. And Emily. Emily was laughing. I reached out, grabbing at nothing. "Emily." A tiny hand clutched my wrist. But it wasn't warm. It was cold. Hard. Like porcelain. My breath stopped. And then, inches from my ear, I heard her whisper. "You should have never buried me." The lights flickered back on. The room looked wrong. Like the angles had shifted, like the walls were too tight, too close together. Dad was against the far wall, his chest heaving. Mom had collapsed onto the floor, holding her head like she was trying to block out a sound we couldn't hear. And Emily. Emily was standing in the center of the room. But it wasn't her. Her head tilted. That unnatural, jerky tilt. Her lips curled into a too wide smile. And when she spoke, it wasn't her voice. It was Lily's. "You can't run," she whispered. A cold, sharp gust of wind tore through the motel room, but the door was still shut. The air stank of mildew and rot. And from the corner of the room, she sat there. Lily. Right on the motel chair. No one had moved her. But she was closer now. Her dress filthy, her tiny porcelain fingers stained black. And her eyes. Her eyes weren't glass anymore. They were human. Wide. Unblinking. Watching. And then, the motel walls started bleeding. I don't know how else to describe it. A dark, thick liquid seeped from the wallpaper, dripping down in slow, sticky trails. Mom screamed. Dad grabbed Emily, shaking her. "Let her go, you bitch. Let her go." Emily giggled. And then, the room exploded. Not with fire. Not with sound. With darkness. A black, writhing mass burst from the walls, thick tendrils shooting out like fingers, clawing toward us. The air turned freezing, the lights shattered, and the entire motel shook like an earthquake was splitting it apart. And Lily. Lily was standing now. Her head tilted, her tiny hands outstretched. Welcoming. She opened her mouth. And screamed. Not a little girl's scream. 1,000 voices at once, shrieking in pure, raw hatred. Dad collapsed to his knees, hands over his ears. Mom was crying, rocking back and forth. And Emily. Emily's body jerked, convulsing, her eyes rolling back until nothing but the whites remained. She wasn't breathing. She wasn't. No. No. I lunged for her, grabbing her by the shoulders. Emily. Come back. Lily laughed. A soft, mocking little giggle. I snapped my head toward her. And for the first time, she moved. Not like a doll. Not like something small and stiff and lifeless. She twisted. Her limbs stretched, her face contorted, her jaw snapped open wider than humanly possible. And from her mouth came a second pair of hands. Reaching for me. I did the only thing I could do. I grabbed Emily. And I ran. I don't remember leaving the motel. I just remember the cold air hitting my face, the sound of my parents screaming, and the feeling of Emily twitching in my arms. And then everything went silent. I blinked. The motel was gone. Not just abandoned. Gone. The parking lot was cracked and empty. The building itself was half collapsed, the neon sign dark, the windows broken. Like it had been deserted for years. And in my arms, Emily stirred. She opened her eyes. And smiled. But this time, it was her smile. And she whispered, weakly. Is she gone? I didn't know what to say. I just held her tighter. Because I could still feel it. That presence. Watching. Waiting. Somewhere, in the empty night. A tiny, distant giggle. Aftermath. We left that night. We don't talk about what happened. We don't mention the house. The doll. The thing that took Emily and tried to keep her. We moved to another state. Changed our numbers. Burned every old photograph we had. But some nights, I wake up. And I hear it. That tiny, soft tap tap tap. Like porcelain feet walking across the floor. And I know. She's still looking for us. And one day, she'll find us again. The end.